Hey guys, Cyberlink here. Some of you may have played with me back in T1. I played under the name of Pyro. Mainly played in the shifter mods, Renegades, Annihilation, Paintball, Attack, stuff like that. Dabbled a little bit in T2 on Goonhaven and a little bit in TV. But anyway, that's my background a little bit. I just wanted to get that out of the way. Let's see. We'll go ahead and start with Todd. Let's see, how's your day going, Todd?
Day's going great. It's good weather in Atlanta. Actually, there's a big game developers, or I shouldn't say big, but a local game developers conference this weekend. So we're wrapping up Friday afternoon, and a bunch of people from Hirez are heading downtown for a developers conference for neighboring studios called Siege. So if anyone's in the Atlanta area and they happen to hear this weekend, there's actually an Art of Tribes panel that Sean and his team are giving there. And if they record it, we'll try to maybe make that available for folks afterwards. But should be a good weekend.
Cool. Well, I got a bunch of questions we're going to go into, but I guess before that, I just want to go ahead and say that a lot of this stuff is subject to change. I mean, they're still testing, they're still doing all this other stuff that they got to get ready for us for beta. But let's go ahead and get into some of the questions. So we'll start off with the big one, actually, with closed beta. How close are we?
All right. We have a date. You heard it here first. The team's working hard for closed beta to start on Friday, November 4th. So a few weeks away. We plan on announcing that more broadly next week. And as you may have known if you've been following us, we wanted to start in September originally. That was kind of our original plan. But there were a few adjustments that we wanted to make before beta. Specifically, some things we've been working on are character progression elements. Those were things that weren't in alpha but will be in beta. We can maybe get into some of the details of those later. And secondly would be changes or improvements based on feedback from the alpha testing group. So some of the things, of course that group was under NDA, but we've in the past shared some of the high-level things that we got feedback about. Disc jump strength was one, some challenge that people had in chasing down flag cappers, which is a big part of the game. Basically, ability to quickly gain momentum from a standstill, and even overall speed of the game. So all those were elements that we've been pretty transparent. We had one set of kind of physics code and dials around the first build that we took to QuakeCon, and then we adjusted some of those for PAX and Gamescom. We tested it in alpha, and those have gotten further tweaks between alpha and beta. And around those things, at least, I think that players that were in alpha will be pleased with what they see in beta. So that's the set of code we'll be rolling out on the 4th of November.
Cool. Quick question, how were the testers chosen?
So first, we're still in the process of choosing beta testers. So if people haven't received a key yet, they don't need to panic yet. And the other thing we're going to announce next week is basically that there's 3 ways to get into the beta. First is hand selection from all those folks that registered with us. So that's still ongoing. And there's a lot of factors that go into how we choose that, but most important is we're trying to get a representative target audience. So diversity as far as their system spec, their geography, their gaming experience, all that stuff. So first is apply on the website, or if you already have, we're going to be issuing keys to some of those folks. Second, we'll keep doing some promotions and contests. I know people saw the thing we did on Facebook, which was a real small one, but we'll continue to do things like that because that just helps draw more people to the game, which is good. And then third, starting next week, we are going to be taking pre-orders for basically a what we'll call something like a VIP starter pack. And again, we could maybe get into the details of that, but one of the things that will give you, in addition to just like a 33% discount on buying stuff, is admission to beta guaranteed. So all 3 of those populations will be looked at when we start the beta in early November.
So that starter pack you're talking about, that's kind of like the vet pack was talked about on the forums?
Well, there have been a few packs that were talked about on the forums. I don't want to imply that it's like a buy one, get everything pack, because that's not what it is. It's more of a way to get VIP status in the game, which will puts you in basically a more elite set of queues. It also gives you kind of a bunch of in-game gold so that you could purchase classes, and again, you're getting basically a discount on that and a booster. So it gives you a pretty compelling, starting experience. But it should basically, be positioned as a starter pack versus a, hey, this is all I would ever have to buy. But one of the things that it does include is admission to beta.
Okay. Do you have an idea how many players are projected to be at launch?
Launch of beta, you're asking?
Yes.
I suppose? Yeah, CBT. It's not finalized yet. What I can say, it's certainly going to be many thousand that we'll be looking at. Of course, a lot depends on the pre-order, but we'll give more guidance on the number as we get closer to that early November day. The other thing I wanted to make sure people know is that we will have servers for this first phase in North America and in Europe and in Australia. So anyone from those geographies is definitely encouraged to apply or to look at the pre-order if that's something they're interested in, because we want to, as part of the beta, test servers in all those markets.
Okay. Will the population ramp up from the start of closed beta through it?
It definitely will, yeah. We do plan to have an open beta that'll be completely open and to gradually let more people in. So, again, we'll give more specifics, but in general, we'll ramp as we go.
Okay. Any limitations in closed beta compared to open?
Well, first, compared to alpha, I would say, I'd describe our alpha testing as just really focused on the match-based combat with a limited number of loadouts and no progression system. So in closed beta, we're going to be adding other loadouts, and we're going to be testing character progression outside of matches. But at least for this first phase, there's no guarantee that progression will not be wiped along the way. We'll just have to continue to work with the beta population and see what makes sense and communicate along the way. And then once we go to open beta, at that point, our intent would be to maintain progression and obviously just to scale up as far as number of people and potentially other geographies. So.
Okay. Will the alpha testers be passed through to beta?
Yes. We look forward to having them on board.
Excellent. Contest winners, the Facebook ones and the rest of them y'all have given out and stuff like that, they're going to be joining us in closed beta?
That's right. Yep. Some of those folks, in fact, got keys, right towards the end of alpha. So some got in, some didn't get in, but all those keys will also be valid in beta. And as I said, we'll be doing other contests leading up to the start of closed beta and beyond.
Okay. How does the NDA apply for closed beta? I mean, what can be said, if anything?
For the very beginning, we're going to keep the NDA in place. So at that point, beta testers can communicate that they're in the beta. They could even encourage their friends to apply if they want, but anything related to the product will still be under NDA and confidential. We will almost certainly lift the NDA sometime before open beta, but we'll, again, communicate when that happens. So players should assume if they get in, they're still under NDA until told otherwise.
Okay. I assume since there's going to be so many players that the servers will be up 24/7.
Yeah, 24/7 may be a little aggressive, but I would say, in alpha, and again, I guess we only communicated this to the alpha group, but in alpha, the servers were often up, but there were very small pre-scheduled windows for the actual matches. It was a small population. We wanted to get critical mass, so we would, do a test on a Sunday night, let's say, and have them be very organized and pre-scheduled. In closed beta, we want, I would just say, a high availability of servers and continual matches going on. And as we get closer to it, we'll announce the exact schedule, but certainly much, much higher availability compared to alpha.
Okay. How do you guys plan on collecting data and feedback from players?
So our two primary methods, similar to the guidance we gave the alpha group, are subjective feedback via surveys and then more objective via in-game metrics, because we spend a lot of time, collecting those metrics so we can see what players are actually doing in-game, what classes they're playing, what weapons they're using. And so surveys and metrics will be the two main vehicles. We'll also communicate ahead of then more details on reporting bugs, because we're still determining what system we're going to do as far as just straight bug reporting. But as far as the more gameplay subjective feedback, surveys and metrics primarily.
Okay, metrics or game data, I'm assuming.
That's right. Sorry. Yes. Data that really players don't have to do anything other than play and try to win and have a good time. And then that is game data that we are harvesting all the time from the server that we can analyze, and we can look at, again, what weapons are killing the most compared to the time that they're in a player's hand and that sort of thing. So they are really great source for our designers as far as tweaking weapon balance, which we definitely expect to do during beta, closed beta. We expect to be a lot of tweaking those values around game balance.
All right, cool. Well, that answers a couple questions about the beta testing. Let's see, on to gameplay and goals. What were you guys going for by implementing the loadout system?
Loadouts, yes. So we see a lot of comments on loadouts, obviously, on the forums. And so first, what were we not going for? We are not trying to take away fun and flexibility in order to make it easier for noobs. So I definitely, we see that claim a lot, and so that was not what we were going for. I guess the one-liner of what we're going for would be maintain the spirit of tribes, but emphasize teamwork and meaningful choices even more through class-based gameplay. And so really, in every interview, we've tried to basically get the word out there that we're trying to maintain the feel of tribes, but add a class-based nature and character progression. And so, to us, class-based, that doesn't mean dumb it down. It's just it is a different approach to the game. And so our designers, in the same way they're inspired by tribes, they're inspired by a lot of class-based games, whether that's the Battlefield series, that has kind of a subtle class system, or Enemy Territory, or even Team Fortress 2 that has one of the most, I'd say, strongly typed class-based systems. So in all those class-based games, it's the nature of them where every class has strengths but also has weaknesses. Some of the classes might be more versatile, some of them might be more specialized. But for all those games, just like with tribes, it's certainly not the case where the designer says, hey, let's do classes because that's less work for us, or let's do classes because that's going to dumb down the gameplay. Really, they're usually saying, let's do classes because if you're stronger at one thing and I'm stronger at another thing, that emphasizes interdependence, that emphasizes teamwork, and we think that teamwork is a core part of tribes. So that's really the main thing with loadouts, was we wanted to take the game in a class-based direction. So I know it's a sensitive point because tribes vets really appreciate the freedom of the original equip system, and we don't think the original equip system was at all broken. And it's more that really for us, we feel like classes will allow for more interesting gameplay. So we think, how can we maintain that spirit of freedom, but and give players other meaningful choices, such as what classes you're choosing, how you progress your class, even systems that players haven't seen yet, such as the perk system that has another degree of flexibility for players and player choice. So it is definitely a change to tribes. We get it. In our mind, it's an evolution, and it's going to make the franchise give it a lot of long life. But we understand it's a change. But that's what we're going for, is a class-based approach.
Okay. Do you think that those at some point in the future would be able to be customizable beyond just picking a loadout?
I do not at this point see any customization that would kind of break the idea of a class role and what the class strengths and weaknesses are, because that would kind of defeat the whole point. I could at some point see, and this is very speculative, there's nothing on this planned in the beta, but if we had a class that was more of a sniper related role, there might be an alternate sniper rifle that a player could perhaps get. But what we wouldn't want to do is take a class that is kind of, again, a sniper class and give them a very strong mid-range weapon, because, if you think about a sniper, They are, they can, they're really strong from range, and they can take down a flag capper. They're intentionally weak against vehicles, and so if you know someone's playing that class, you can approach them with some, with some predictability and some tact. And if that class also, let's say, had a spin fuser and could take you out at the mid-range, that completely changes it and makes it not a class-based game. So that's, hopefully that sort of shows people what we see as the strength of a class-based game, is that there's some predictability there as far as strengths and weaknesses.
Okay. I guess another soft spot, it would be the internal communication with you guys about the spin fuser plus 2. What was talked about? How did y'all come to the conclusion that it wasn't good, or what?
Yeah, that's a good question. And kind of related, I'll hit the spin fuser one, but back to your configuration. I mean, another just important way to think about it is if we had this large universe of weapons and players could kind of pick their own, we really feel that the game would, after a series of months, basically a dominant strategy would emerge. So in game design they talk about the dominant strategy, which is, that's just considered the best way to roll up your character. And so we feel like that most likely the community would converge on a few builds, and everyone would be running around with kind of the same Swiss Army knife, really generic builds, and they might be fun, but it wouldn't be a class-based game, and there would be less teamwork and interdependence. So that's kind of the other point on the mix and match request. So yeah, specifically about spin fuser plus 2, which it definitely got a lot of discussion and debate in the studio, so it did not fall on deaf ears. And I'd say, the discussion, it was deep. It wasn't like, well, the design team thinks we should do it and management shut them down because they wanted to make a lot of money. That wasn't the case. Across management, across design, across art, there were various discussions about that because it was an interesting approach, and I think an attempt by the community to maintain some class differentiation, but also give the spin fuser. But ultimately, like any discussion, debate, you got to reach a resolution. And we challenge our design team. Really, their job, the ones that are working on classes, is to deliver classes that are balanced and attractive, but also very distinct. And ultimately, giving every class a spin fuser inarguably hurts its distinctiveness. You might think it's better, you might think it's worse, but they're certainly less distinct. And our team felt they could, in fact, deliver classes that were balanced and attractive and distinct better if every class didn't have a spin fuser. So we seriously, talked about it. In fact, I read personally a lot of the forum posts around it. I saw, I'll even if I can recall. I think three here. I'll summarize the three main arguments as to why tribes will fail unless there's a spin fuser plus 2. So because they were all well thought out. So the why tribes ascend will fail unless there's spin fuser plus 2. There was one set of arguments that was kind of that the spin fuser is so iconic that it just has to be in the game. So I'll call this like the lore argument. And I agree, it's the most representative weapon by far. We just don't necessarily feel we should limit ourselves to it. And, it's kind of like, I guess, if someone asked me what's the weapon of Star Wars, and I'd say the lightsaber, and then I'd say I expect the lightsaber to make an appearance in every movie, but not necessarily every scene of Star Wars. And that's, I guess, kind of, just from the lore perspective, what I think about the spin fuser, and that we should definitely want to see blue discs flying on the battlefield, but maybe not necessarily in every single fight. But our art team feels it's very iconic. We do, for the light class, for the medium class, and for the heavy class, there's a loadout for each of those that carries a variety of the spin fuser. And in fact, they're different models. They all have really cool looks. They are all different weapon designs derived from a previous Tribes game. One was influenced from Tribes 1, one from Tribes 2, and one from Tribes Vengeance. And in fact, I think we'll share maybe we'll share an image of that, because I don't think we've revealed the heavy one or even the light one externally, and they look really cool. So anyway, understand the lore argument, but but don't necessarily agree with it. There was a second argument around kind of the gameplay balance argument, right? Which is just that it's such a good weapon that as a player I am disadvantaged if I don't have it. And specifically, it's good at multiple ranges, it can do AoE, and it also really can boost my speed through disc jumping, and that's just so important that I can't, it's indispensable. And bottom line, if it turns out to be that indispensable, then our designers aren't doing their job with the classes. So we have alternate movement devices for players, whether they're movement boosts like other self-impulse devices like the Arcs Buster that we've talked about, or whether they're just movement boost options like we put on the Jumper class. We basically just want to give other players ways to accomplish that task. So players know it's a great weapon because they used it before, but our job is to make all the other classes feel just as viable. And then the third argument I saw, which was cool, was the argument about the the ball sense. So kind of there were some analogies to sports and how playing with the ball just kind of has a feel to it. And so this was like the feel argument, that the projectile-based weapons and the spin fuser, they just feel so unique. They're fun and unique, and really people should be exposed to that because that makes tribes. And again, I'll agree that those projectile-based weapons and the spin fuser, they feel awesome. The question is, how is best to expose players to that? One of the classes that we plan to make available to players for free will contain the spin fuser. So if I'm just coming into tribes and I'm just starting out, I will have an option to play with a class that has a spin fuser and get that feel. But we also want a free player to come in and have a weapon that they might be more familiar with, that would be a hit scan based weapon, because for good or for bad, a lot of people, that's what they're used to playing. And so to take the ball analogy further,
yeah,
I
I kind of
guess.
feel that a lot of the people aren't. I mean, if they want to play hit scan, they'll play hit scan game. They just kind of. I think most of them get the idea that when they play tribes, it's more of a timing based shot, not necessarily hit scan. I think that's one of the other issues.
Yeah, no, I understand that, because again, it is it's introducing a new set of weapons to the series. So I totally understand that. Bottom line, we'd like to have those players get exposed to tribes, and we don't see any reason why those weapons can't fit in the universe, either from a lore standpoint or from a gameplay standpoint. So we think it's a great opportunity for someone to come in and maybe they never would have heard of the spin fuser and picked up the spin fuser, but they're going to start with a hit scan weapon, and they might find that a spin fuser or one of the other projectile based weapons, the bolt launcher, the Arcs Buster, is fits their play style and is a lot of fun, and they see that on the battlefield, and you grow more players that learn to love the spin fuser. So I guess I'm repeating all that just because I want people to understand that when they're expressing these things, we are reading them, we are listening. In some cases, and in particular the spin fuser plus 2, we disagree with what the best step is for Tribes Ascend. But ultimately, I quipped that Tribes is about freedom, and we want to give people the freedom to play without a spin fuser if they want to. And that's really what the thought is. We've got at least 3 loadouts at this point that have spin fusers. They're different variety of spin fusers, and so those are choices available to players. We've got many other ones that don't have spin fusers, and we'll see in beta. Our designers believe that many of those classes with spin fusers and without spin fusers have a place and will get played, and we'll hopefully prove that out during the beta process.
Okay. So currently, what are some of the gameplay goals that the studio has?
Gameplay goals new to beta, or
Yes.
just in general? Okay, yeah. So the as I mentioned before, there's a few physics tweaks around with speed of the game that we adjusted further from alpha that we want to validate in beta. We know they feel better than ever here in-house on the build we've been playing. So that's one. But the bigger set of new systems that are going in are around progression. So progression of character is a big additional set of systems for us that we really want to introduce into Tribes Ascend, and specifically that means a perk system and a skill system per class. So that is new. It's not something the alpha testers got to see, and so that is the system that we're working on over the next few weeks, and in addition to others, but that's the major one, and that we want to get a lot of people exposed to in beta.
All right, you brought up a topic in that the character progression. Why have that in Tribes Ascend?
Why have character progression in Tribes Ascend? Well, there's I guess there's two types of progression, right? There's in games, simply speaking, there's player progression. So I'm achieving more mastery and advancing as a player, and Tribes has always been great about that. If anything, maybe some would say the skill curve was a little bit too hard to get into, but certainly it was satisfying and held people for many, many years. But character progression is really something that is in almost every game today, right? I mean, whether you're playing, it's not just an RPG. If you're playing a casual iPhone game, a shooter, a web-based game, everything at this point almost has some form of character progression. It's I think just a great innovation in gaming that's been embraced in the last 10 years. So I guess first reaction to the question, because most of us play a lot of games other than shooters, and it's kind of like, I don't know, someone saying, why have internet on your mobile phone? It's like, because it's an awesome innovation that's kind of taken for granted by people that use phones these days. So, and I think the reason that is that people enjoy progressing, and some players progress their player skill at different levels. And so if they have a character progression, it allows them to have meaningful, short-term goals and long-term goals, and they see themselves moving forward, and that feels good. Particularly in a game like Tribes, where it takes a high degree of player skill, higher than many other games, and a high reliance on your teammates, often depending on the game type, but certainly in Capture the Flag, then I think character progression is even more important, in that I want to feel like I'm moving forward on some dimension, even if my teammates suck, and to be honest, even if I suck. Certainly I should move forward faster if I'm succeeding and my team's succeeding, and that's what our systems do. But you want to reward also the playing of the game, so there's that always progress forward, and that's part of why people play games. So that's a bit on why character progressions in Tribes Ascend and in most other successful games today.
Okay. I mean, can you give me an example of how long character progression would take? I mean, say you have a player plays for an hour or two a day. Would it take him 3 months to get to whatever the max level is? We'll just say 50 because that's what GA's is.
So this is definitely one of those qualified answers, because the system hasn't been tested by real players, and as I said, that's one of our major goals of beta, is to understand what values feel good. But I can tell you that the build that is right now, the one that we played, today in the studio, as currently configured, for me to fully max out a particular class, so not all my classes, but a particular class that I really like, let's say like the soldier that carries the spin fuser, the medium build spin fuser, that would be, if I didn't pay a dime, that would be approximately 20 hours of gameplay to fully max out the skills and perks for that class. If I was a VIP, I would probably do it in about half the time, so it's like 10 hours. If I bought a boost, I could do it even faster. So those are the ballpark numbers, but again, those are values that will not be finalized until we're done with the beta testing.
Okay, so you can actually stack with the, I guess I'm going to call it the vet package, and then the booster?
As currently envisioned, you can. The VIP pack is a one-time account-based thing that, again, you pay for it once and that applies forever, and the boost is, temporary, that as long as it's active. And yes, they will stack.
Okay. Y'all have any idea how many levels you're going to have in this progression system?
Again, it'll almost certainly change. Right now, per loadout or class, there are 11 usable skills or perks per loadout. And the way the system works right now is a class itself is unlocking skills and perks specific to that class, and then your character rank is more of just a prestige thing. I believe that's currently set at 50, but that character rank that goes across classes is entirely prestige right now. It has no gameplay effect.
Okay. Well, that's pretty good info. Let's move on to servers and social stuff. How will the server selection list work for Tribes Ascend? I mean, is it going to be something like we've seen in the past in, T1, 2, and TV?
So the UI is definitely a work in progress. I'll speak about beta since that's the next milestone coming up. And so for closed beta, they're going to be high-res servers, again, in North America and EU and Australia. You'll basically just be choosing a game type and hitting join, and there's some light matchmaking that goes on, but then generally you stay in your group and there's backfilling going on of that instance. So pretty traditional way to join, very quick, very easy. I'll emphasize this isn't going to be in place for the first phase of closed beta, but as we've communicated in the past, we do want to support private servers, and for that we would anticipate a fairly traditional server browsing experience where you could look at named servers, but we want to have that in place before release, but those will not be in place for the first phase of closed beta.
Okay. That actually was going to lead my next question, is that if that was going to be included, because I know some players just want to hop into, Goonhaven is a good example. Most players, hop in that to play with each other.
That's right, and again, we're working on that, but at this point, it's not going to be in place for closed beta, and we also really, again, as I mentioned, a lot of the way we get feedback in this first phase is we want a lot of matches to happen. We want to collect all these in-game metrics, these game stats from the servers, and do it quickly. Be able to cycle new versions out quickly, and so that's another reason why it really helps us accelerate the feedback and testing to have everyone playing in the same sandbox at the beginning.
Okay. As far as servers that we can rent and stuff like that later on, do you have any ideas for server flags beyond what you've said about generator stuff, things like that?
Nothing beyond what we've said. Again, those are the type that we've communicated in the past on generator gameplay or health regen on or off. Those are fairly simple things for us to implement. So we're going to take a lot of cues from the community around what people want, but because that's not a deliverable in the first phase of closed beta, those are not being worked on right now.
Okay. Any idea how the social system is going to work for TA? I mean, are we going to have friends lists, clan rosters, calendars, looking for clan options and stuff?
So got a big roadmap of a bunch of cool features. The one that's in right now for closed beta is a pretty simple friends list, but it will help. And then next on the priority list is a party system, so I can more easily join. And then next would be clan rosters. After that, more general kind of esports type support. But again, the only system that is more of a definite by the start of closed beta in early November is the friends list.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's it for my questions and stuff. Do you have anything you'd like to say to everyone?
Good questions. Hope people got some real answers. I guess I'd emphasize two things. One, thanks for following the game and participating on the forums, and we really do understand that you guys are trying to make the game as good as possible. Hopefully, with this interview, you got to feel that we read the forums, that we do take the feedback very seriously, and we share those same goals of making the best game possible, even though we may reach different decisions ultimately on some of the elements. But that said, the Alpha Group's already provided great feedback, and as I mentioned, many things which have been incorporated before the beta build. And then, I guess the second point would just be, the way our studio works, the Tribes Ascend dev team, it plays the game every single day. To be honest, sometimes they play it multiple times a day because we'll do multiple builds a day, and with every new build, they play it. And so ultimately, that team is trying to make a game that they're going to enjoy for the long term. That's really their goal. And so some of the design choices, the more controversial ones maybe for tribes vets, specifically around classes and around progression, a lot of it is coming from a group that that plays the game every day and wants to continue to play for the long term and have a big group do that. So I guess we share that in common with many of the tribes vets, and that tribes vets have played T1, T2, and some of them TV, for quite a long time. And so we share the same goals. We're also just looking at what systems for today's game players we think are gonna hold people, and even for ourselves are gonna hold people. And that's really what drives a lot of what goes into Tribes of Sin. So that's the stuff I got. I appreciate the interview. We'll try to maybe keep these going a little more regularly, just because I know we've been dark for a while, and it's really just because we've been heads down. Team's been working really hard to bring you a beta build, and we look forward to playing it online with all you guys.
All right. Well, there you have it, guys. Some answers to some forum questions and community questions that have been floating around. Hope it cleared up a couple things for you. There's a lot of misinformation out there, but thank you, Todd, for your time and for the answers and stuff like that. Hope to talk to you again.
All right.
This is Cyber, and see you guys.
See you guys. Bye.